basically most of, not this past week, but the previous week. I was
live. Welcome to Comics Aficionados, everybody. Doc was just running down all the health issues he had when he choked on some dog hair. Apparently, he got coronavirus. He was on the shelf for 10 days or something like that.
And now I'm better.
Bad juju.
We're really excited to be here with you today. Got a fantastic panel to talk about Dawn of X. And first off, I want to say what's up to my boy Boom. He's one of my Pinoy comic book readers that I've talked to every once in a while. I've seen him in Manila a couple times at some like Comic Cons. We went to the comic shop together. He's a great guy. Glad to see him here. Haven't seen him before. Hello to everybody that's here already. Like I said, we're talking Dawn of X. We're going to discuss whether this has been botched by Marvel Comics. And with me, we've got one of the guys that the leading internet voices of X-Men since Jonathan Hickman came aboard. How you doing, Stax?
Oh, living the dream, man. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, I'm glad you can make it. Normally you're not available. The audio issues because you got to take care of the kids. Something I know all about. But
Amen.
I guess you're on the road this weekend.
That's it. I'm on the road for work. So, and that rarely happens that I can get away, especially on the weekend. And the weekend you got the kids. You got to take them and do something. So it's hard to do that Saturday mornings. But I'm glad I'm here and thanks for having me.
Well, yeah, thanks. We have Ryan Wilson in the chat saying, hey, he would like to help support the channel. I do have a coffee page. The link is in the video description. If you want to go and help out the channel that way, I would very much support it or appreciate it. The support goes a long ways, and we got lots of big plans in 2020 for
we
Thinking
also read
Critical.
super chats.
And we absolutely do read super chats. We'll respond to all those and answer any questions that you might have. Also with us is the salty dog, the curmudgeon of critical. What's up, Pele?
Yeah, it's 10 already. Jesus Christ. Hey, how's everybody doing this morning? Hope everybody had a great week, and we're going to talk about things that suck and things that don't suck.
Absolutely. Yeah. And of course, with us is X-Men historian, Marvel aficionado, the man who choked on a bong full of dog hair right here on Thinking Critical. What's up, Doc?
Not much, sir. I'm doing good now.
Good. That's good to hear. And a solid dog. I think you are live with us, because the chat's live. If you're watching, we're definitely live. We've only been on the air for 2 minutes, almost 3 minutes now. And last but not least, I want to send a special shout out to Perch. He's a part of channel history. I had my first video go over 10,000 views this week. I'm not sure exactly what happened. Apparently, it was shared somewhere, or maybe it got into the recommended viewing. And thank you so much for doing that with me. I'm shocked it was a retail video, but ton of great information in that video.
Yeah, thanks for having me on this morning. Glad to talk to everybody as usual. Love all these guys. So great time. That video got shared a bunch of retailer channels. Now that's not enough to do it, but it's made its rounds throughout, I think, Diamond and some other places. So it caught industry attention is what I'm finding. But this is the channel to get that news from.
Absolutely. We got even more stuff. Perch and I are going to record some interesting news about the industry after this. And happy Lunar New Year, everybody. We definitely celebrate it here in the Philippines. It's and it sounds like Yodius Lee is also celebrating it in Singapore. Glad to have her as well here as well. She's a huge X-Men fan and a big comic reader in Singapore. So are we ready to talk about some Dawn of X and discuss whether or not this has been botched? Can it be salvaged?
Oh, yeah.
I'm ready. So when Jonathan Hickman, did House of X, Powers of 10, Dawn of X was supposed to follow it up. We were kind of promised like a connected narrative that built on Hickman's ideas and themes. In your estimation, Doc, is that what we're getting right now?
No. No, it seems to be just a smorgasbord of nonsense, none of which really seems to connect very well. And it's like they forgot all of the cool plot points that got started in House of X and Powers of X just so that they can keep writing X-Men as they have for, the past 8 or so years. But now living on Krakoa.
It's a poo-poo platter of poop.
yeah, it's. I mean, look, we all read House of X, Powers of X, and there were so many cool kind of plots and subplots and everything that you could take and run with for years, and most of them have already gotten ignored, and just kind of fallen down the rabbit hole, and so that they could write about geriatric people and have a bunch of people apparently like punk rock rednecks in rural Kentucky beating up X-Men. I don't understand. I don't understand half of what the hell they're doing. Doesn't seem to make any sense. It's not a continuation of what we all wanted.
I don't think that I think that a lot of the people who are writing this crap didn't even read House of X, Powers of 10. I'm really starting to believe that. They just kind of like, oh, well, I've got an idea. And they just take off with it without even getting it cleared by anybody. It's painful.
Yeah. Stacks, you review basically every one of these issues. You do previews on them. You have a ton of interaction, with House of X, Powers of 10, Dawn of X readers. What's the reaction that you're getting from the readers as well?
The biggest thing I'm seeing is that there's been a huge drop off, especially on titles that aren't X-Men or X-Force. Marauders kind of has a loyal fan base, but it's a very weird group of that tend to like it. I do think that one's kind of been it came out really at the bottom of the barrel and kind of has actually gotten slightly better as far as the storyline goes, but it's focusing on interaction. It's dropping off pretty hard. The views for these videos is going way down. I think it's losing a lot of interest really quickly, and we're only at issue 6, and that's with the double shipping that we've seen.
Yeah.
So,
are you seeing that as well, Perch? As far as from a retailer perspective, is interest waning? For Dawn of X already?
Yeah, people have figured out which titles they're going to collect, and most people collect X-Men, and most people collect X-Force, and then it's very hit and miss depending on what people like. Whereas when it first started, people were picking up everything, and Marvel would be quick to argue that was their plan. I'm not sure that was their plan, but that was their plan of, hey, we're going to have everybody try everything out, and then it will settle to what people will like. And so they're not necessarily alarm bells going off. But I think the drops for the titles, particularly things that aren't X-Men or X-Force, are significant, a lot more significant than they thought, particularly coming off House of X, Powers of 10, where they brought a lot of people to the table. And now it's turning out to be, well, that was a magical start, but these issues are now behaving like all the other issues we have. But it's I guess I wouldn't be me if I didn't say, keep in mind, everyone, that we were at almost the lowest of the low of X-Men. And House of X, Powers of 10 came out, and suddenly within a month or two, everything was amazing. And so you could certainly see a turnaround like that again. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Absolutely can happen. The challenge is, and you're going to get to it, I think, in a minute, you've got so much volume now to turn around. That is a hard problem.
Yeah, it's really sucks the joy and the interest out of buying all these books when it's double shipping, and it's the quality and tone of Dawn of X. Kind of like they feel like they're all over the place. Only X-Men or X-Force and X-Men to a lesser degree are really building on House of X, Powers of 10. New Mutants in particular feels schizophrenic. It's rendering it almost unreadable. Stacks. Have you noticed that as well?
New Mutants, after it hit that terrestrial storyline, I was like, I'm out. I'm not following 2 stories within one title. I don't want to pick up the book and not know or have it on my pull list at least, and have this 2 to 3 issue filler that I have no interest in. I don't really care about what were you saying? The heavy metal grunge redneck that's beating up mutants in Kentucky. I don't care about it. The stuff, the first 2 issues where they were in space dealing with the Shi'ar Empire, that was actually interesting. They had me hooked on that, but then they threw issues, I think it was 3 and 4 in there, and I was like, nope, I'm out. I'm I'm not playing a title hidden within the title on my pull list. So
yeah, you got a super chat here, but we can get to that.
Yeah, I want to thank Ryan Wilson for the $1.99 super chat. You don't know what timeline of everything. What do you have to say about that, Perch?
No, you're right. I mean, I think a lot of people still have the suspicion that this is happening somehow in a different way, and we're not reading a complete narrative. We're not reading a static timeline, and it's true. And for a very tightly connected book, even though House of X Powers of 10 did have things skipping around, you had a tight story there. And now you've got a lot of things. You were just hitting on with New Mutants. I think it ties in perfectly to that comment of if you're a customer and you're putting out your cash and you have a pull list, a lot of people like the Hickman in space storyline. They like it. It feels like the classic New Mutants, good storytelling and all the rest. You hit issue 3 and it's a left turn. And it's a dramatic left turn. It's not like they're telling two stories in the same comic where you're going back and forth between locales. It's a completely different comic, different creative team. And it's if you're a customer, you're not going to subscribe to that. You're just going to say, I'll pick up those issues when I come in the issues I want. And you're going to break the run. Now, I'll bet Pele has some thoughts on this from a collector's standpoint. That's a frightening statement in some ways. If you start to train your readers to just not collect, then you're going to lose a big part of your audience that just picks up month in and month out. And that's kind of what Marvel's doing here. That's
absolutely correct. People are concerned that they're going to miss something. They're like, what did I miss? I don't understand. They're bringing the book up saying, did I miss a conclusion? Did I miss something? What's going on? And that's one of the worst things you want to hear, because get back to the main fundamentals here: continuity and consistency. And that's not what I'm seeing out of 90% of the Dawn of X titles right now. I mean, I was going to talk about this for a second. You've got X-Force, X-Men, and then it's extreme drop off, big drop off down to Fallen Angels, and then everything else. And it's like, this is bad. We're talking about 60%, 70% drops from, the launch of those titles already. And yeah, and the teams that are involved don't give me a lot of hope. They really, they've got some stinkers in there, and people with no track record or poor track records. So, that's on Cebulski and them. They need to, they need to cut the dead weight, or these titles are going to die right on the vine.
Looks like we have a super chat from Angry Man
Baby. $2. Hickman ripped off Soma. I just did a video on it. What do you say about that one, Doc?
I have no idea what Soma is.
It was a book about a girl who experienced very similar to I haven't read it, but experienced the same, basically the expiring timeline. When she expired, she was born again with the same.
That was the
it was a novel, I think.
That was the Something Lives of some other.
Okay.
Well, there's been multiple stories about people being reincarnated or living.
Soma's a sleeping pill. Oh God, that's harsh, dude.
Okay. I saw this video. Okay, I got the titles mixed up. Sorry.
Yeah, no. I honestly
it's a game, is as they're saying in the chat.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar with it. Yeah, what it is he tried to go the Grant Morrison route of kind of having this giant idea for where the X-Men should go, and to entirely kind of revitalize them with all this whole new kind of direction. Except for, first of all, he decided to outsource 80% of the plot to other creators, and then not manage them in any significant way. And then we have what we have right now, which is just bland nonsense.
So one of the things that we heard a lot about was that all these Dawn of X creators, they were in this like DM kind of apt where they're always bouncing things off to each other. Like, hey, I want to use this character and this is what we're going to do. Stacks, does it feel like there's a level of connectivity? Does it feel like everything's tying in together? Because that's not, the feeling I'm getting.
Not at all. Look at Apocalypse. His demeanor in X-Men 4 or in the main X title versus what we're seeing out of the Excalibur title. It seems like two different people a lot of times. It's not working. It's really not. The further, going back to X-Force and X-Men being the titles that are doing well, the closer they stay to that idea of this humans versus mutants, House of X, Powers of 10 storyline, the closer they stay to that, the better they're doing. All those other ones where they're getting into these different characters or having a character show up in multiple issues, it just seems like it's not working. Apocalypse is the biggest one that comes to my mind. I'm trying to pull another one right off the top of my head, and I don't have one. But the big thing is that those other narratives aren't working as well. Psylocke going off on her own for Fallen Angels isn't bad, and granted, Magneto kind of using her as a kind of his own, he's using her basically like his own X-Force, I guess you could say. He's sent her to go see Sinister and go take care of what you need to. But it's even that one is I'm not seeing it. I'm not liking it. But,
I think that there is, so my perspective on this is looking at the issues, reading. I do believe fully the story of there's chats going on, the writers are collaborating. I believe that the thing that I think we're seeing is that the styles of the writers are so significantly different that even if they're trying to collaborate on this character's going here, and because if you just read the stories, you take the emotion out of it, and what characters are where, it does fit together a lot tighter than other Marvel books. I mean, in terms of the line, it is doing a better job there. It's the tone of the writers. It's their own personal style that's coming in that's so jarring and so different that it feels very discordant if you're reading them all together. Mm-hmm. And that to me is a major problem. I would argue that Brian Edward Hill and Jonathan Hickman have a very similar writing style. They're doing different things, but the characters feel dangerous in Fallen Angels. It like you were making the point about Magneto, it feels like what he was trying to create. You bounce over to Gerry Duggan or Tini Howard, and it's a radically different view of Apocalypse, of how the character is written and talks and interacts. So you get this very different storytelling approach. And for a tight connected universe that has those many different writers all kind of playing off different ideas their own way, it's weird. And it comes off weird.
Well, I mean, look, let's be honest. Gerry Duggan is, I confuse him for Cullen Bunn all the time. They are the vanilla midgets of Marvel Comics. And Tini Howard's name on a cover should be akin to a trefoil symbol on a door. Everything inside is radioactive.
Yeah.
Just don't. Just don't open it. But beyond that, like, as you said, though, most of these guys are, most of these writers, they're just not good enough. They're not good enough to go with the big concepts. Tinny, Gerry, I have serious doubts about Vita, and I have absolutely zero hope for Leah Williams. I even have some questions on whether or not Chip Zdarsky is going to make it her an interesting miniseries. About the only one that the only two that seem to know what they're doing is Hickman and Ben Percy. And, I'd love to see more of Brian Hill on these books, but he's too busy.
I'd like to see him paired with a stronger artist as well. I mean, no shade to that artist, and I know it fits, but I mean, if you take that story and you put it with some of the higher quality art, I think you'd have something a lot stronger on the stands.
Oh yeah,
totally agree with that.
Absolutely. So we do have a super chat from Johnny Rios Castro for $4.99. In your opinion, are any of the new X titles important to the main X story? Which is the main X story? They're all so different. I think X-Force is extremely important. It's kind of showing the threats, the outside threats, to Krakoa. X-Men, of course, is important. I know New Mutants, the stuff Hickman is doing in space. He said it plays very much into the main story. It is really important. That's why he had to write it. I don't know why they're mixing the story up with this terrestrial thing by Brisson. It's really bad. But Fallen Angels also is building on some of those things, because we know technology is like the ultimate threat, that was presented in House of X Powers of 10 and kind of evolution through technology is how humans, overcome mutants in the end. And Brian Hill's playing with that with overclock and things like that. Perch, what would you say are the most important and which ones are filling into the main X story?
I mean, I think X-Men is center of the universe, for sure. And I do think I agree with your point on New Mutants. I got a scoop. Let's say an extremely reliable source. The New Mutants, the reason why they're dragging this out in space is because the conclusion of that storyline needs to line up in terms of timing to the end of the year. So they're dragging it out for that reason. It's got to conclude with a moment that's going to hit around October, November. So that's why they're doing that. I would have frankly just delayed the title and just run it that way, or completely separate out of these stories. But it is what it is. I agree with you. I think X-Force is important. I suspect that X-Force is going to start to kind of wander to the side more and more. But I think Ben Percy and Brian Hill took the cliff notes of what Hickman was trying to do of technology and kind of play with this concept of evolution and what happens to characters when you get the threat of death taken away and how they fit with that. It feels like they took that concept and said, okay, let's take our styles and let's write within that world and let's really explore technology and let's explore these things with the same voice. And it feels like the other writers have taken it and said, for one thing, the whole Krakoa and reincarnation and kind of that part, it's an interesting kind of side concept that you can play off of, but the whole book should not be based around that concept. We've got, I think, 5 books by April that are all going to be claiming to deal with Krakoan life. And good Lord, we don't need 5 books dealing with that.
Yeah, I don't Morrison tried to kind of play with that, and as well as some of the other X spinoff books like District X with and the Brotherhood. With the idea of mutant culture. They tried this, 15, 18 years ago on, X-Men, and none of the side books really, nobody cares about that. It's a halfway interesting subplot that's brought up every so often, but nobody wants to actually read books about how mutant culture is and how it's
the
different.
Mutant slice of life.
Yeah, it's just slice of life nonsense in a different culture. Nobody cares and nobody reads it.
Yeah.
Or you could hear once. I mean, he created such a unique world. I can definitely see a title dealing with that. But you can't have as many. I mean, they're all wandering into that, and increasingly it feels more like almost fanfic from the writer of like, man, I wish I was a mutant, could live on a hippie island drinking all of that. That's what I would like to do. And so, I mean, that nobody does want to read 5 titles. Well, you got to have something more to bring to the table, and it feels like they're kind of digging out of the same well over and over. But as somebody said in the chat, it's way, way too early to say it's blown up. It hasn't. It's just it's steered into a different direction, and anything can change. I just, for me, my worry is, 14 titles going on 20. I said it on a video recently. If you get 20 titles in 1 month, like it's highly likely we will have by December for events and tie-ins, at the $4.99 price point, it's $100 in 1 month for X-Men books, and that's too much.
And I also want to point out, we are being, we're talking about some of the misfires here, but right now the state of X-Men is the best that it has been, in years. Correct, Doc? There are good X-Men titles. There's a good through line for plots and everything for the writers to at least work with, and there's top tier talent on it.
Yes, I mean but the problem is the signal to noise ratio at this point is just getting out of hand. There's a lot of stuff that just doesn't matter and that's not very good. And you don't need your customer base wading through a bunch of trash to find treasure. Just give them the treasure. That's what they want. That's what they're going to pay for. Yeah, sure, you can sucker them out of buying 4 or 6 issues of some trash until they realize it, but eventually they stop trying things. So the next time you do release a little bit of, some gold, they're very skeptical of it.
Mm-hmm.
Back to that original question from earlier, the which titles are actually important to them. If you were just reading X-Men and X-Force, you're probably good for right now. But New Mutants, like we're saying, is going to tie in. I think looking at solicitations, I think it's between 7 or 9, issue 7 or 9. New Mutants is going to tie directly into the outer space portion of New Mutants. That is going to tie directly into the X-Men title. So they are going to feed back into each other eventually. But it's a long side road to get there on some of these. It seems like. What
I saw was a lot of confusion about. I thought New Mutants would be like a horror type title. I'm seeing the movie stuff, and why aren't they trying to tap into the movie that's coming out? And
because the movie's never coming out.
Yeah, because I'm like, well, I don't. Well, it is going to come out. They have announced. Feige announced that they're going to release it intact. But here's the thing, though.
I'm hitting
comics are not the movies, and they're not going to. You're not going to get that type of, continuity between films and the comics, and for a very good reason, because there's going to be a lot of key differences in the characters, and a lot of just it's not going to be the same. Never has been the same.
Yeah, and you think about to take it to another level, part of what's going on, and you have Disney who's trying to get to the phase 6, 7, 8, whatever. They're trying to build up stuff. Hickman was a go-to guy for the Avengers. A lot of what Feige did was related to what he put in place, and he's known on good terms with Feige and kind of what he creates. And so I believe personally, I think there is a little bit of a let's throw everything up on the canvas, see what kind of stuff sticks in terms of big ideas. Not necessarily these comics are going to get translated to the movies, but just how can we generate X-Men in a number of different fronts, and what concepts we're going to be able to take to the screen. And I think that's also a little bit of what you're seeing. I would also argue that I would be completely shocked if New Mutants in space and dealing with Shi'ar and everything else did not have implications for any kind of cosmic work that wants to be done in the future. But that's thinking way ahead. I just wish right now that I feel like the X-Men, the Dawn of X went too far too fast. I completely agree with the idea. If you have a lot of different titles that appeal to different tastes, awesome. It's a shotgun approach. It was we got off of House of X Powers of 10, and it was like a shotgun blast in the face of all these books and constant announcements, and it's tough for people to consume. And when they can't consume it well, they don't. They just forget.
So, Perch, we have the numbers rolling in. I'm about to do a December roll up of the sales. X-Men staying up there at top. It's the best selling ongoing right now. It's still over 100,000. But we significant drops on all of them, including X-Force, despite being a very high quality book in my opinion. They're dropping down into the 45 to 50,000 range, which is very good in today's market. Where do you see these titles settling? Are they going to be 25,000, 30,000? Have they saturated the market so much that people are having to make tough choices?
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of these titles will settle down there. I think others are going to start to disappear. I think there's going to be kind of continual relaunch of these books as we go through the next 2 years. And that's not a bold prediction. I mean, that's Marvel. But it is, I guess, again, it's a shame. I think Marvel would have been stronger personally. Now they're marketing, their business people might disagree, with 4 books all at the 75 to 125,000 range than 14 books at 25 to 30,000. I think, a stronger line would have been a healthier line.
Yeah, slimmer line would have been a healthier line, which would have been. I mean, when you make one corner of your universe basically, must see TV,
Yeah.
That's what they needed to do with the X-Men. You just make it all must buy. You know, the kind of stuff that, you know, there's only 5 books, but you got to buy all of them. And because they're all good.
There is such a disparity of talent between the top writers and even what Marvel considers the middle tier talent that it's shocking, really. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. If they'd had 4 or 5 books by the top talent rather than 2, maybe 3 books with great talent, and then all the rest of them with whoever they could, you know, drag in off the street, you know, it's just, it'd have been a much better situation from Jump Street, but they just don't think that way, you know. So it's unfortunate. I agree with you. They should have started out with fewer books with just better talent and better premise to begin with.
Marvel, so I do want to say, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe. If you're enjoying the video, give us the thumbs up. Let everyone know that we're having a great conversation here. Apparently, I want to talk about Diablo Hashcraft's mention here. It rolls into something I want to speak about. He says, my budget can't keep up with the weekly X books anymore. I'm waiting for the trades to come to the library. It's putting a serious dent in reader wallets, but they're doing something really weird, really cash grabby with the trades. Initially, they're releasing the trades. Volume 1 will be the first issue of all 6 issues. Volume 2 will be the issue 2 of all 6 issues, and then they're going to re-release them all as the X-Force trades and stuff like that. Why are they doing this? I can't get around it. I find it so annoying that they're even trying to do predatory practices on people waiting for trades now.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling, really, and they're going to sour that market just like they did with the comics. I mean, I don't understand why they're going. I know why they're going that route, because they're trying to get as much money extract as much money as they can. But you know, there's not enough gold. There's not enough gold in that box to sift through. You know, it's just there's not enough of worth in there to sift through 10 pounds of rock to get to your half a gram of gold. And it's really frustrating, because I'm seeing the same thing. People have limited resources, and they've got their budget for 10 books in a month, 12 books in a month, and they're not. If we'd gone to the 4 or 5 books, 4 or 5 solid titles, you'd had a lot more people that say, this is what I want, this is what I'm going to have on my pull list. Instead, you've got like we mentioned earlier, like, okay, well, I'm going to get X-Force, X-Men, and I'm going to see each time that I go in the comic shop and look at the books and see which ones I want to buy. And, on the limited amount of new books that we get in there, if a book really is good that month, it's not going to last. And by the time they come in, it's gone. And, it's very frustrating. And, if they're going to be doing chicanery with, shenanigans with, the trades as well, I don't really see how there's going to be, any opportunity for people who have limited means to really dig into the X titles and enjoy them for the long term.
Stacks, this comment from Eric M kind of flows into something I know you wanted to address. He says, I always question why people don't like oversaturation and double shipping of X-Men. Then I have to keep reminding myself that people have different levels of disposable income. I noticed that that's kind of causing some kind of conflict and stuff that you've seen, right?
Absolutely. I put out a rant earlier about just this whole topic over on my channel, and it was basically I had 2 different responses. It was a bunch of people saying, "Look, I absolutely agree with you. I had to drop 2 titles from my pull list, and I hated to do it, but I just couldn't keep up with the double shipping, and so many titles." And I completely feel for those folks. Then you had another group that was very much, why are you complaining? This is more X-Men, and more X-Men is always better. And it seemed like there was this big divide between people who are actually going and picking up comic books and actually visiting their LCS and supporting those guys, and a group that is just, reading comics online. And I'm, not to peel back that scab, but that is an issue in the fandom where you have a loud voice online that's all about more titles. And then you have those guys like myself that are walking in their LCS and flapping down cash and being like, this is getting a bit much. And he's absolutely right. Different people have different levels of disposable income, but some of these titles that they're not necessarily going for the market that would have that disposable income. So it's a really interesting dynamic they're pulling here, and it's a really interesting dynamic in the fandom where you have these two, those that support and those that read, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, you can clearly see the ones that are sailing the high seas and those who are legitimately supporting the comic industry. And it's I don't want to see people jump on the ship and all that, but some of them feel that I can't afford this is the only route that I've got. And that also, when you have 15, 16, 20 titles, whatever, X titles, I think unfortunately you're going to see more and more of that, and that's bad all the way around. That doesn't help Marvel. It certainly doesn't help the LCS.
And while they claim that you don't need to read them all, there's still a reading order in the back of.
All right, Doc, we're actually going to get to that. First, I want to Boom send a super chat. Known as the Red Pixel for 150 Filipino pesos. You're speaking my language, Boom. Of course, I live in the Philippines. I'll definitely be able to use that. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. I think they're releasing all these X titles to get us interested in the Disney X-Men. Remember when they messed X-Men and Fantastic Four in the comics to get at Fox? What do you think about that idea, Perch?
Yeah, I mean, like we mentioned earlier, I think that this is IP fishing to some extent. They're looking for fertile ground to go with the X-Men films. I think that is where they feel they want to go in terms of the movies. And like I mentioned earlier, it's an established fact. Feige and Hickman do have some level of relationship that is part of their history together. And I think there is some thanks, at least from the movie side, to Hickman, because a lot of what he did with the Avengers and put things in place with Infinity. And also, he was one of the people on the creative team that actually they liked that he was, when he was presenting his feedback, he was respectful and there was a good relationship there. So I absolutely think that's similar of what we have going on here. I think there's a desire to get content in and beat us up, get 2 or 3 years out. And yes, absolutely, I completely agree with Red Pixel.
Thank you so much, Boom, for supporting the channel. Really appreciate it. We also have another super chat from Old School Comics, $4.99. All the stakes were removed when Resurrection was introduced. To my thinking, it makes X akin to villains a la Ra's al Ghul. What do you think about that, Doc? I know you've been not happy with Resurrection.
Yeah, I've always felt that Resurrection, cloning, all that fun stuff, it takes a lot of the stakes out. And I was worried about this during House of X, Powers of X, that a lot of the stakes are going to be removed. I mean, look, we saw it in, X-Force #1. We saw Xavier get shot in the head, and they did it as ostensibly a cliffhanger, but the collective response of the fandom was, okay, so because we all knew that, okay, well, it's just, okay, is he coming back next issue or in 3 issues? That's what it comes down to. I mean, we know that they're coming back. Nobody can die. That's the point. Right. Nobody can die. There's no stakes to that.
I think
you had a different point of view. Did you want to address that?
Oh yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I think that you're absolutely right. To my mind, Xavier was the kind of the golden one not to do right away, because that was the question of, like, he was part of this resurrection process. So if he's gone, what does happen? But they burned through that storyline almost immediately, which was kind of crazy. But my thought is, I think the resurrection concept can work if you have this kind of this. Is there a dark side to it? And when we were reading House of X, Powers of 10, I remember on this channel, Doc. Paley, we were speculating that there was going to be a gotcha here of well, the resurrection wasn't actually quite as it seems, or maybe these are clones with sinister traits in them, or just there's some other aspect to it that makes this really bad. And in a couple months' time, you pay it off by saying, oh, all the people who have been resurrected are now tainted in some way, and there's a major problem here. I think you can still turn that around and do it. It's just they're kind of running out of time to serve that up, because mutants are getting resurrected left and right. Apocalypse used Resurrection Excalibur kind of as a just get out of jail free card for the hell of it. And so that's kind of blowing this idea. So I don't think anymore that there is a secret dark storyline that involves Moira and something's going to happen where the resurrection, there's another aspect to it we haven't seen. I think it is what it is. They're just getting resurrected, and at some point, the island blows up and they don't.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping that they would come up with a situation, per se, like, somebody died, let's resurrect him, and it failed. It just outright failed or something like that. And it's like, holy crap, like say some character, that, people know of, but aren't like overly crazy about or whatever. And just, a sobering moment where they kind of have to, they have to use this as a last resort as they always should. But it's anyway, Wes, you were going to say?
So I did want to say to Doc, we did hear Jonathan Hickman come out and say, listen, only read the books that you want. That's what we intended the whole time. Didn't really jive with what they initially said. And it certainly doesn't jive with the fact that there's a reading order in the back of every Dawn of X comic book that you're supposed to read it in that order to get the whole story.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think that the only reason why they're coming out and saying, oh yeah, you don't need to buy everything now is because they got the backlash that they were not really expecting. They felt like they could just keep releasing X books because people were liking them. So just keep releasing more and they would never reach the point where people would go, what the F? My wallet can't handle this. You're up to like 15 and and none of these even feel like a continuation of what we all signed up for in the first place.
I see a lot of that on Twitter, but I guess they aren't really paying. Marvel doesn't pay attention to social media anyway.
So we do have a super chat from Ryan Wilson 199. All the X-Men are dead, and they're just exact copies. Stats, do you think all the X-Men are dead and have been resurrected, within this time frame?
I think at this point, not without running down a roster, but yeah, everybody, all your main folks are dead. Apocalypse just bit it over in Excalibur. So, I mean, I can't think of anybody who at this point isn't dead that hasn't been resurrected. I mean, you probably have a couple, but it's that, is an exact copy, and we're talking about, you're making exact copies. Is that you? And you get into individuals like Nightcrawler, where is that, having faith, is that me? Is my soul in heaven? You get into some really interesting, and I think X Factor, they advertise as the book that's going to discuss some of those things for, basically, I have a DNR, a do not resuscitate or do not resurrect dog tag on me or something. It's like, once I'm dead, man. Just let me be. That, and what about these mutants that didn't want to come back, So are they copies? Yeah, they're copies. I don't think it's the same. Is Wolverine? It's got all his memories, but it's not Wolverine. I do think, to what Perch was saying, I do think there's going to be an underlying darkness to it eventually, but I think that's going to be Moira. And I think when this is actually going to get good is when the whole Krakoa turns on itself. It won't be interesting until this utopia gets, fractured down the middle and some of the lies and stuff come out. That's when it's, I think, the story's really going to pick back up, possibly to House of X powers of 10 levels again. But until you get there, it's going to be kind of just treading along at about this pace.
There is a dark half of Krakoa. It's just not really been discussed very much in the comics.
Right.
I do want to say thank you very much to Ryan Wilson for the support. We also have another super chat from Angry Man Baby. Can't the X-Men just fight Ultron? Pele, why can't that happen?
God, I wish that would happen. That was one of the better parts of Secret Wars, actually, the first Secret Wars series, the fight with Ultron. But yeah, I wish that they could just have an overarching enemy that they. But you know, mankind when they've when they've set up that mankind is the enemy, you know, I think it's just a little too broad, and you know, maybe humans that are reading this really don't want to be seen as the enemy. You don't want to be painted that type of light. So it's an interesting situation that they've gotten themselves into, and with all the enemies are on the side of the good guys, you know, just how good can the good guys be? You know, I guess that's what I wanted to say. It's, you know, we've got Apocalypse, we've got Magneto, we've got, you know, everybody that, you know, Black Tom Cassidy, all these people that we were taught, you know, over so many decades, you know, that these are the bad guys. They are in it for themselves. They're going to end up, you know, causing more harm to mutants overall than they ever add, you know, help. And, you know, hey, we're embracing them with open arms. They're our brothers now. And there's a lot of people out there that are like, I still can't get into that. I still can't, you know, accept these people that tried to murder the X-Men for all these generations. Just now, oh, we're buddies. Everything's great, you know, and I just don't see it. It doesn't pass the sniff test with me anyway.
All right, so we got another super chat from Ryan Wilson, $4.99. I predict Moira will have to change some huge catastrophe, resetting the entire X-Men universe, allowing new stories to tell from the beginning. Percy, do you see that? I mean, I know, remember, we talked about that at other times. Is she going to go to the next timeline? Is she going to go to that 11th life that was spoken about kind of early on in House of X Powers of 10?
I mean, they've got that dangling out there, and I think that's always a possibility. But at the same time, I think that you have you've now the more titles. I mean, you got Hulk tying into Krakoa, you've got Avengers, you've got all these other books within the Marvel Universe starting to tie into Krakoa. So if there's going to be a big reset, you've got to clean that up in all the other books. Or maybe Marvel simply does just, you know, kind of hand wave, forget about that, and just moves on and ignores it. But the more these other books all tie in, the a little bit tougher it's going to make Marvel to just reset and tell new stories. I think that kind of spinning off this idea, though, I do think Moira is still at the heart of things. I think the fact that she's been off the table and she has her own secret layer and everything else is key. That she won't let herself be read by psychics or other things. It does make you wonder who she is in league with. I've heard a lot of speculation. I've come to the belief myself that she's in league with Sinister to some extent, and that's how you get out of this resurrection cloning bit. You discover that, you know, all the mutants are in some kind of underground prison trapped somewhere, and these people that we're seeing right now are just pawns. But again, the more they have different writers come in, the more it's hard to keep this narrative together. You've got, you know, who knows if all the writers that are involved in this are in on the big master plan. Chances are they're not, given Hickman's style. So where does it go from there? It creates a very sticky situation for them.
You think that Hickman then is just kind of letting them run wild until he slams on the emergency brake, you know, at some point in the future, and, you know, throws the wrench into the works. I was kind of wondering about that myself, because he's known to do pretty audacious things. So
yeah, I agree completely. Well, you know, it's tough because they're having such coordination. I do know that some of that coordination is taking place, and that's all great. But at the same time, some of the writers that come on are kind of known, for lack of a better word, leakers to different sites. And I think if the big 3-year plan was rolled out to everybody, I think it would have been popping out by now, honestly.
Well, I mean, he's not even telling. What I'm thinking of is he's not even telling them about this. He's just letting them run wild and do whatever they want. And then, you know, they pause all shipping of the titles for, like, you know, a month or something, except for the main titles, and then he throws the wrench into it. You know, just to catch everybody off guard.
It's possible, certainly. It's hard to say.
I kind of want to give people like a hope that, you know, what we're seeing right now is not really what's going to be going forward. That this was kind of a setup.
We do have a super chat I know you want to get to, but I would, just to conclude that thought, I would argue, you know, as much as we're saying a lot of negative things about this book and everything else, remember this guy came in and completely turned the corner on things. And I do expect there to be some other turns in the future.
So I did want to say thank you very much, Ryan Wilson. We got another super chat from Angry Man Baby. If you die and I make a new you without all your thoughts, with all your thoughts and memories, you're still dead. Play Soma. I agree with you. There's a lot of weird stuff. A lot of the characters aren't really acting like themselves. We've seen like a very vicious side come out of Beast. We've seen Jean Grey, saying, let's get violent. The only character that seems to not really be affected by Krakoa really is Wolverine and maybe a couple other ones. But, in Nightcrawler, dying and then being resurrected, with his faith, I don't see him actually going along with that. So it doesn't feel like these are the real characters. I do agree with Perch that the real characters are somewhere, or these really aren't them. And I think that's why they a lot of them do feel off. I haven't played Soma. I don't really get a game very much, because I have a couple of small children. But I definitely am going to check out that video that you had because I'm very interested to see how Soma kind of ties in with House of X, Powers of 10, and Resurrection and all that. Thank you very much for the super chat. So we got a lot of great stuff going on here. One of the other things that I wanted to talk about, we've gotten into the double shipping, kind of getting expensive, but one of the other fallouts, one of the big fallouts has been, we're starting to see delays now. We're seeing artists having to be rotated through because they're pumping the books out too fast. It's definitely negatively impacted Fallen Angels, which is now going to go on hiatus because they double shipped out everything. Mm-hmm. They knew Brian Hill had another engagement where he was going to have to go do some work in Hollywood. Perch, I think this might even be the bigger part of the botch.
Yeah, I do. Again, this is all very speculative, but first off, Marvel's strategy has always been flood. When you get something that you more or less works, you're going to build to, you're going to flood things. And when we hear, Hickman or people say you don't have to read every X-Men title, we've heard this from Marvel before. When they do an event and they have a million tie-ins, say you don't have to read all the tie-ins, but of course they want you to read and buy all the tie-ins, otherwise they wouldn't be doing all the tie-ins. It makes no sense to do some random, disconnected book to War of the Realms and say, you don't have to read this. Of course you're supposed to read it. It's a bit disingenuous, that comment. So they got onto something with House of X, Powers of 10. They shocked the market. A lot of things went. The reaction was kind of a classic Marvel reaction of flood. Just pump titles out as fast as you can, double ship everything we have in the bank. And they've depleted a lot of the build-up work that had been done very, very rapidly. So that's why you're seeing all these other random new titles into the picture. They're just trying to keep as much out as fast as possible, and that's a big that's a problem. I think that is probably, I think you hit the nail on the head. That's the biggest part of the botch. It's one thing and cool to have different titles that people can read with different styles. Awesome, but having these random shipping delays, artist changes, titles going on hiatus, it didn't need to go on hiatus. There's just that's bad planning, and I think that kills it more than anything.
Yeah, yeah. They've had this problem for a while. They shoot their wad real quick whenever they have something popular. They overexpose it. They overdo it. They'll any degree of, I guess, stuff in the can that they had put together gets burned out real fast. Now I still have as I speculated in that one speculation video, that a lot of it was in order to get 2019 into the positive. But no, they do this all the time. Anytime something's popular, they overexpose it. They dilute the brand. And it's a problem for Marvel because they never realize where is too far until they've already gone too far, like by orders of magnitude. And then by then they can't really walk it back. It's a Marvel problem, and it's been a Marvel problem for a long time.
Well, it's their strategy, and I think you can look at this. I'm not being, other side guy intentionally, but they've also dominated the market. They continue to be on top in the numbers, and part of it is this flooding strategy. Now, I think it's cannibalistic and bad for the industry. I think a lot of people have made that case, including me. But it's how they've been on top, and I think as long as they keep getting that kind of feedback, they're going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I
Yep.
mean, until it actually starts harming them,
Right.
to the point where they are not the market leader, they'll keep doing it because they don't think, even though you can look at the overall industry and see, top books going down and down and down, and the sales on mid-tier books, when 30,000 is considered solid these days instead of cancellation territory, that's a problem. Back in the day, even for a company like Wildstorm, as long as they sold over 25,000, they were fine. They wouldn't get canceled. But that was for Wildstorm. It wasn't for DC proper. It wasn't for Marvel proper. They now 30,000 is considered solid territory. That's, and if you're a B-list publisher, that's great territory. But no, Marvel's just going to keep doing it. They're going to keep diluting their brands. I mean, they're actively diluting their brands on some of their big X-Men characters with this Children of the Atom launch, by just having gender and race swap the versions of the same characters. Now, I'm still pretty certain that those are going to end up being a chimera. It's going to end up being a chimera book. But if it's not, then that's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's a sore subject anyway. I mean, so this really they need to tighten up and show a little bit of
restraint.
Yeah, a little bit more restraint. It's to say it's gotten out of hand is an understatement. But I think you're right. There's a level that was there that they paid attention to in the past, and they just don't pay attention to it anymore. And I think that if they feel that a comic has dropped too far below a threshold, they just increase the price rather than fix the problem.
Yeah.
And
or relaunch it again with a new number one.
Exactly.
Which the publishing strategy is working for them to some extent. I think the argument you get into, and you get into this argument with Freeboard all the time, which is, well, you guys who are making these kinds of comments, you're doing kind of whataboutism in the sense of, you're telling us here's the potential we've lost, but you don't know that potential. You're speculating just as we are. We're the publisher. We have all this background knowledge. And they use that argument against retailers when there's retailer summits and when you have luncheons and things. That's the argument they use, which is, we are the publisher. We see the numbers. You see some of the numbers. You're telling us how to run our business, but you're doing it with not all the information. And we are profitable, air quotes, profitable. And
I think that's what made them really bad. I talked to them, and they said the same thing to me. We've got all the numbers. We know what's right for Marvel. And I said, well, I've got all my numbers and I know what's right for my store. And I have to adjust my Marvel purchasing to compensate for that. And they did not like that. They got really testy about that.
Yeah.
But, I've got to do what's right by me and by my customers. And that doesn't include Marvel's bottom line.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough situation because you gotta say yes, they do have data we don't have, so we're making business guesses based on our side of the business. But I think there's some common sense stuff, and here's where are you a evangelist? Are you somebody who believes the industry can do better? And I think that's the core question of you look at comics and you look at the numbers, and 2019 was up, and that's all great. I think Wes going to do a video on that. That's great news that it's up. But from my perspective, I look at this and go, with a multi-billion-dollar move of the industry, with all this opportunity, we actually are playing in the little leagues. We're not doing as good as we can. But if you talk to people, certainly at Marvel, they will fiercely argue with you and say, no, we are actually at our potential. We're doing well. We're growing appropriately. This giant sky that you imagine isn't there. And so I think it comes down to a question of belief at that point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's and as a survivor of the the implosion of the 90s and even the Rust Belt of the double aughts, it kind of sobers you up to the idea that Marvel generally does not care if your store makes it, and you've got to understand, that we've got to understand that as shop owners, and what they want, their whole numbers, when they say we know all the numbers, we know exactly what's going on. Well, they're also talking about digital sales. They're also talking about, direct trade paperback sales to large resellers, and not to us. So, there's a lot of shenanigans as far as that's concerned. So we've got to do what's right by us, and and that doesn't include, going along with, whatever predatory practice they've decided to launch this month to try to squeeze another 3% out of us.
Yeah. Comic industry can do amazing. I think in my mind, we're very much in the first quarter of where it can be. And there's a lot, it can grow a lot bigger and do a lot more. And that's completely my belief.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a little bit off topic, but Boom has another super chat, 150 Filipino pesos. DC destroyed Wildstorm with just a little imagination. Stormwatch would actually fit very well in the main DC universe. Doc, what do you got to say about that?
I've always hated the idea of putting the Wildstorm characters into the DC proper. I really don't like it. Their Wildstorm is a much more Marvel-like universe and does not fit very well with DC.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. The Red Pixel, thank you very much. Doc doesn't agree with you exactly. He loves Wildstorm, but we shall see in the future. There's another super chat from Ryan Wilson, 199. Is Marvel offering shops deals on certain comics? What do you say to that, Pele?
Oh no! I mean, we get Diamond, we get the deal from Diamond. We've got our purchasing prices, and that's what we get. Marvel doesn't really reach out directly in those situations, not that I've noticed. What about you, Perch?
No, I mean the deals are like you have incentive deals. It's not like you for variant covers or for certain promotional material, but it's not like you're getting hey, for Dawn of X this year we're going to give an extra 5% off the SRP. It's nothing like that.
Yeah, I've never seen anything of that sort. It's always incentive covers. But
so he's adding a little bit more to his question. He'd heard rumors that Marvel is offering deals, buybacks on Captain Marvel. He's talking about returnability to adjust the sales on Captain Marvel. I know they do overships on a lot of those books.
They do overships, and they'll do occasional, very occasional buyback, or it's returnability is what it is. But that's not. Some of this theory, I don't know if that's where you're coming from, but I know there's a couple channels, larger channels, were suggesting that Disney was trying to artificially boost the numbers on Captain Marvel by basically giving them to comic shops for free. That did not happen, I can completely say. Yeah. And returnability is very, very scarcely used, certainly by Marvel. A lot, but more by DC, but really very rarely by anybody. They'll do various things. My complaint is people. I won't bore people by going through it again and again and again every time, but Marvel's approach to marketing and providing deals to the stores that would be common sense is garbage, is the nicest way I could say it. They don't do things for the stores like this, and they badly should. I mean, I wish the rumors were true that Marvel was doing a bunch of stuff for Captain Marvel. That would be genius. Please start. But they really don't. This new storyline, I remember, had a couple incentives to it, but nothing kind of like what you're mentioning there. It's all very amateur, if you will.
Yeah, we have customers that come in, and we get the posters in. We don't swap out our posters like every week, like a lot of shops do. I find good posters, and we stick with them for a while. But we get lots of posters and stuff in. We get lots of as far as the Marvel previews and stuff like that. And DC's freebie, quote freebie. We pay for that. that actually, that's actually expense. So it's Marvel's not known for being very altruistic or being very savvy as far as trying to grease us up. But
so they don't send you a couple of Dawn of X or House of X Powers of 10 posters, a week or two before it's going to launch.
Yeah, but that, you know, we're paying for that by the
Yeah, I mean for
we
free.
buy.
Yeah. So you'll still display it. That's crazy.
Yeah, we'll display them. If it's a big shift like that, that's something that we will prominently display. But if it's just like, oh, hey, look at this, you know, no. Like, here's a new Iceman poster for you to put up on your wall. No, thanks. You know, I don't think so. But
so the next thing I kind of want to talk about, you know, as far as Dawn of X and the way that things haven't been handled or mismanaged, you know, is the word I would use. You know, Wave 2 is about to hit, and there's so many new series in this. We've got Wolverine, Cable, Giant Size X-Men, Fantastic Four, Hellions, X-Factor, and Children of the Atom. And we know we have two more waves of X-Men books before December. You know, like Perch said, it's probably going to be over 20 X-Men titles by the end of the year. Pele, how much, you know, when is enough?
You broke up a little bit on that, but I think I got the gist of it. Oh gosh, I think we reached enough a while back. You know, we passed enough, and we need to kind of, you know, get off the interstate, go back, and hit that exit. You know, I'm thinking that a dozen at most, 10 story, you know, 10 different books at this point. You know, I'm a firm believer in what Perch was saying earlier, you know, better quality from fewer books, because they just don't really have the writing talent to cover more than, you know, than a half dozen and have excellent quality. At least that's my opinion.
Yeah, I know. I agree. I think it's interesting. You can make a very solid debate, and there have been about, well, you know, where do you profit more over time when you factor in all sales, trades? You know, is it worth having 10 books at 30,000 or 4 books at 80,000? How does the math work out? And is that putting too many eggs in one basket if you're going for a smaller run? I think it, at the end of the day, comes down to confidence in your line. Do you believe from business decision that you've got the right people on the books, the right kind of business breakdown of cash and what you're funding? For my, you know, to me, the winner part of that argument, and so people are talking in the chat about, you know, this is business, not politics. And one of the things I like about this channel, what you do, Wes, and then people here is, you know, we can complain about things we like or don't like and other things, but at the end of the day, it is all business. It's not somebody at the top just being a crazy lunatic for political reasons. It's they do believe they're making the best business decisions. We're here to kind of comment, critique that, and is it true? I think the winning argument on this whole topic is, if you're a company, you've got to market your line. You've got to promote it. You've got to advertise it and everything else. There's a reason why car companies don't shoot out 60 different vehicle brands all at the same time. It's difficult from the manufacturing standpoint, but it's hard to market. It's a much cleaner world for a Toyota to say, we've got 6 car types and here they are, and rather than 30. And I think if you take that to comics, and you think about it from a business perspective, it gets harder and harder to market when you've got 20 books a month floating around. That just, you're relying on your own customers kind of knowing what's going on and doing a lot of that marketing word of mouth for you. And that's a bad proposition where I'm concerned. So I think less is more always.
What I run into, and I don't know if you do as well, what I run into is most of the people that have the money, we're talking about, you know, the whales, or at least the big guppies, you know, that have the $200, $300 a month to spend, you know, that are buying 60 to 100 books a month at least. They are the traditional buyers. They are the traditional, you know, comic book lovers. They are not the progressive types. And although there is a market there for the social justice comics and the progressive comics, the people that typically read those, you know, are not the wealthier types of people. And they are, you know, they have a lot of student loan debt. They've got a lot of, you know, they've got a lot of issues with cash flow and stuff like that. And they're not looking into buying, you know, that many comics. I would say there's probably some that are, but for the most part, they're not. And that's why kind of, you know, Marvel isn't really reading their customer base, in my opinion, the way that they should. You know, they're looking at, well, this title at launch sold X, you know, this many copies of it, people must like this. No, they just bought the number one because number ones typically are collectibles. And they read they like to read these statistics and stuff like that with rose-colored glasses and look for what they want to see. And I think that's where politics comes in and can be a rather insidious thing. But yeah, I mean, we get, the excitement over Powers of X, House of X, Powers of 10, and you got the whales back in, and the whales were like, oh, I want these, I want all the incentive covers, I want that 1 in 100, I want that 1 in 250, and they were dropping some serious coin. But when they stop, they look and see what some of the content is later on down the road, and they're like, oh, this is trash, this is awful, I don't want to buy this. And whereas, I have some people over here that only buying 2 to 3 comics a month say, yeah, I like that political message, but, and that's why we see the collapse. That's why we see the collapse in purchasing right now. It's because the whales have backed off and they're saying, I don't really want to support this. At least that's what the whales that I've talked to in my shop are like.
I do want to say thank you to Second Street Marvel for the $1.99 super chat. Thanks for the Saturday comic conversation. Thank you for being here, my friend. And if you haven't been to Second Street Marvel's channel, you're missing out. He's a great dude. He's hilarious. He does a once a week stream on his channel as well. And he covers a lot of great stuff with Marvel and pop culture. There have been some questions in the channel or in the chats, and I don't want to delve into it too much, but I do want to address it from Ryan Wilson and a few other people about how do Marvel pump up sales on certain titles like Captain Marvel. Now, a few months back, Marvel removed their incentive cover and party variant cover ordering schemes off of Immortal Hulk and Amazing Spider-Man, and we saw those sales numbers drop about 15 to 30% just in 1 month when they took those ordering schemes. Perch, do you want to explain that real quick before we get back into the Dawn of X stuff?
Yeah, I mean, the best way to say it, I think two quick ways that they can bounce the numbers a little bit. I mean, first, these incentive ordering schemes is that you've got a variant there and you have to order a certain number of titles in order to qualify for the variant. And since a lot of collectors want to come in and get a particular variant or a particular cover, they'll market a J. Scott Campbell cover that's going to be rare and has a limited print run, but you have to order 10% higher of your previous month, or you have to qualify to a minimum bridge of your previous month or on a certain title. And it's not always the same title. So, for example, a House of X Powers of 10 special J. Scott Campbell cover might require that you purchase 10% more Captain Marvel books as an idea. And then there's a bunch of different ways you can do that math, and there's a lot of details here. So please don't say, oh, he gave me the complete answer. There's a lot of details, but that's a summary. And then the other thing they do is somebody asked a question about overships. And that's been a huge area of misunderstanding for people. Put very, very simply, you order 20 books, they send you 30 or they send you 40. That extra amount is the overship. You don't pay for those as a retailer, but you do pay for the shipping. Now, the shipping is it's extra money. Paley and I have talked about this in the past. It's negligible. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge added bit of money. The huge misinformation that was put out on a lot of YouTube channels, including one of the big guys, was that the comic stores were forced to buy these comics. That's not true whatsoever.
No, that's not correct. Yeah,
they are free. And generally speaking, your shipping cost. You can take those comics, you can walk down the street to half price books, and you can make a shipping cost easily if they don't sell. But what they do is they bounce the units numbers, and it makes it look like the title actually had more volume to the shops than what was actually ordered. So it's a misleading practice. On the Marvel side, they would argue this is marketing, and it's true. Other industries do this. It's simply saying, we believe in this title. We think you're not ordering enough of it. We're going to give you more of it as a gift to you, the shop, because we think it will do more for you. And there's truth to that, but the other part of it is they do use it to prop up certain titles that are not working out for the line. There you go. I'll take a breath. Sorry for the long-winded explanation.
We do have a super chat from Johnny Rios Castro, $1.99. Hey, Pele, any thoughts on the Dark Phoenix covers? What do you think about those, buddy?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of soured on variants lately, but I do like some of them. I think that the Excalibur cover was really gorgeous.
I like the upcoming XMen one. I did order that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're hitting the right notes on that. I'm just worried that people are already soured to variants. I don't see the sales at all like I used to sell. Used to at one point, as far as what they call buying at ratio, you see a 1 in 10, you'd expect to get $10 for it. 1 in 25, you get $25 for it. That was the traditional way going forward. For a long time rather. Now it doesn't happen anymore. A 1 in 10 might be able to get a couple bucks over cover price. 1 in 25 might get $15. It really depends on the cover itself, who's on it, what the quality of the cover is, of course. But we don't ever, almost never see the full ratio value anymore, and that really affects my order for to try to compensate for having to order 50 books of title that I know is only going to sell about 38 to 40 or something like that, even counting back issue sales for a while. So and if I'm not going to get that back, then what's the point? I'm not going to make profit off of it. So
I do want to say, if you're wondering what happened to Real Comic Stacks, we're not ignoring him, people. He's
I'm back.
in his hotel room. Oh, you are back.
I'm back.
We were ignoring you.
They were vacuuming the room next to me.
But anyway, to answer the root part of the question, sorry, I got distracted on that. I love Jean Grey. I love Dark Phoenix. Let's put it this way. I love Dark Phoenix whenever they really dollar up. That's always been one of my favorite characters as far as variants is concerned.
Also, Tom the Fish did say, I don't agree with Wes on everything, but I can tell he's always making arguments in good faith. Thank you very much. We don't have to agree on everything, but we do need to all be passionate about comic books. That's why we're here. I don't ever put opinions out there that I don't believe it, or I haven't even investigated a little bit and done some reading on. So we don't have to agree on everything. Comics are great, and I'm glad that you come here and listen to my opinions, and maybe we can have a good discussion about comics. Getting back into the comics, Stacks, you're back here. We were talking a little bit about Wave 2 and the amount of books, the sheer volume of books that are coming out. Are you feeling the fatigue yourself as someone that's reading all of these comics and reviewing them every week on your channel?
Yeah, I've already got to the point where Fallen Angels fell off as far as doing reviews for it. I just couldn't keep up because I do the heavily edited videos, and I tried to do a phone video like Doc was talking about, the low budget one, and it just did not go well on my channel. So it's hurting. In April, I think you have 12 titles total. Wolverine is going to be an $8.99 book for the number one, which it's going to be I forget how many pages, but that's $10, once you get taxes and everything. So it's getting taxing. There is a level of fatigue. I'm learning in the chat about this Children of the Atom one. Apparently it's I thought it was going to be the Chimera, and somebody in the chat was saying, I think it was Angry Man Baby, was saying that it's like a knockoff using technology. As soon as they said that, I lost all interest in that title. If it's not tied back to to the Dawn of X or the House of X Powers 10, I'm not interested at this point. So it's going to be getting a lot easier for me to just say, nope, I'm not picking it up. It's getting exhausting. So I would. There are now Wolverine. That's what I'm going to be picking up. You can't not pick up Wolverine. Chip Zdarsky on the Fantastic Four X-Men crossover, 4 issues. I'm all over that. I think Chip Zdarsky's probably. You line him up. He's one of the top 3 writers at Marvel right now. So there's a couple that I'm excited about, but for the most part, these giant size X-Men that they're pumping out, they're basically regular size X-Men with a giant title, and that's about it. So,
Perch, are you seeing? Are people getting excited for these phase or Wave 2 books? We know Wolverine's going to hit. Giant size X-Men's probably going to do good. I expect the Fantastic Four, but some of these other books like Young Cable, maybe not the most popular character. Hellions, a completely new team up of characters. Children of the Atom, X Factor coming back. Is it becoming too much for customers now?
Yeah, you don't have, and I'm still in this odd place where I'm taking care of pull box customers, so I am getting subscribers and people wanting to add things. When Dawn of X started, it was put me down for the entire run of Dawn of X. That's just the default statement. I want all 6 titles, and then I'll feed them off later. And some people have. As this Wave 2 has come out, nobody is saying, put me down for all of Wave 2. And I've talked to other retailers who say, a lot of customers being very specific about, don't just keep adding all the X titles to my book, because a lot of shops will say, I want all the X books. And then at some point, the customer's like, whoa, I've got 14 now. So, back off some of the X books. For Wave 2, people are going for Wolverine. They're going for the Fantastic Four X-Men limited series. They're going for giant size because it's written by Hickman, although maybe it's not written by Hickman longer term. So those are the 3 that are consistent. Nothing else is. And in a lot of cases, these other books you mentioned, it's going to be a shelf pickup and then decide. There's not the same level of, nowhere close to the same pre-purchase excitement that you had before.
Are you seeing the same thing as well, Pele?
Yeah. Wolverine is the top. I'm seeing what we saw as far as pre-orders on Wolverine were, House of X, Powers of X levels. I ordered 250 copies. Of counting all the variants and everything, and that puts it at the second biggest book of the last, third biggest book of the last 12 months. So that's impressive. That's very impressive, and I'm very hopeful as far as Wolverine's concerned. I think a lot of people are wondering what he's doing with all that beer and everything like that in that cave on Krakoa. So,
well, somebody was asking in the chat for a breakdown on who's doing what, and we got Ben Percy writing Wolverine, Vita Ayala on Children of the Atom, Hickman on marginally larger than normal sized X-Men, Zdarsky on FFX, so Final Fantasy X.
Zeb Wells is on Hellions. Cable is Gerry Duggan.
And Leia Williams on X Factor. So, I mean, you're maybe batting 500 on these. Maybe
450.
Tree fitty.
So, Doc, I do want to talk to you specifically about this. We appear to have a lot more viewers in here than normal. If you haven't liked the video, please do so. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, do that as well. But Doc was an X-Men completionist. And when they launched X-Men Gold and X-Men Blue, they had 1 in 1,000 variant covers, which Perch was talking about earlier. So on day 1, they were $1,000 each. And those predatory practices basically stop you from being an X-Men completionist. So you don't have to pick up all these comics anymore, correct?
Yeah, exactly. I don't give, and the thing is, I stopped giving a crap about variants, period, at that point. So not even just the 1 in 10s, 1 in 20s that I would feel that kind of compulsion to pick up. Now it was none. There were none anymore that I had any compulsion to pick up. If I saw one that was really cool sitting on a shelf for cover price or maybe sub $10, I might grab it. But no, so not only did you lose me on the 1 in 1,000s, but you lost me on the 1 in 500s, 1 in 250s, 1 in 100s, 1 in 50s, 1 in 75s, 1 in 25s, 1 in 10s. All of them. You lost me because if you can't be a completist, why be a completist? You're not going to be a 99% completist.
Hello?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. We can hear you. You all right,
Taylor? Might have answered the phone.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but so there's no point. I mean, at that point, you're buying what you want at the end. So I went from being a completist to maybe every so often I'll pick up a variant. Like I pre-ordered the Virgin X-Men 6 or whatever it is, the Dark Phoenix variant, but that's the only one I give a crap on that one. I don't care about them on any of the rest of them. And so I just don't care. Plus the fact that here's the thing. So that X-Men Blue and X-Men Gold, the Lee remastered variants that were 1 in 1000s, that had $1,000 plus price tag on the day of release. I can go on eBay today and probably pay sub $300 for the same book. So these books aren't holding value either. That's the other problem. Some of the older variants before every book had 330 variants, some of them were actually holding value and some of them were gaining value. So you might pick up a 1 in 10 variant for $10, and it goes up to $20-$30 and basically stays there. But a lot of the current variants, once they started really overdoing it, most of them stopped holding value unless it's a very rare variant by a very in-demand artist that has a huge, personal following. A guy like Art Germ, a guy like J. Scott Campbell, guy like who's the painter guy that did some of the Spider-Man ones, Gabriel Doalto. Some of those, they would, they would hold some value or they gain value, but now none of them do.
I mean, you just need to get all Milo Manera variants. That's the key.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I do want to say thank you very much to Club Cosplay, the Nerds Night, for the $2 super chat. Buying again since the 90s. Hickman, MCU Clues. Thank you very much for that. You're having a great conversation here. And somebody, who was it? Big Dad 138 has said, as a Canadian, I have to pay exchange rate and taxes on top of every book. So I've gotten a lot more picky with what I spend on my money on. I have the same issue. I'm in the Philippines. So instead of, everything is 15% higher than the cover price. And then I actually have to pay for the shipping to actually get it to my house. So these books are getting really expensive for me by the month. I still have a wife and kids, so I feel your pain. And I myself am getting much more picky. I kind of actually have to think about my channel and stuff like that. I can't only buy the stuff I'm really interested in. I kind of have to buy the stuff that my viewers are going to be interested in. It's caused a lot of weird consternations on what we're going to buy. So also Nova Nerds in the house. Thank you very much. Who dat? We haven't seen you in a live chat since the Saints went down. I'm very sorry to hear that. You guys get screwed over every year. It's terrible. Okay. And I do want, we're about to wrap things up. So, we talked about, what we were promised in the beginning of Dawn of X, how quantity over quality kind of became the theme of the day. Things feel kind of schizophrenic, double shipping, getting really expensive, delays. We're seeing rotating artists. Wave 2 is even more insane. Doc, who's to blame for all this? Is it EICC Cebulski? Is it X-Men group editor Jordan White? Or is the architect himself Jonathan Hickman?
I think it's partially Jordan White, partially David Gabriel, partially Tom Brevoort. I don't think Cebulski really has much to do with that stuff, but Gabriel and Brevoort are their main job is to focus on sales. So they are the ones that would say, okay, if you have one thing that people like, give them 38 of that thing, because that means they're going to like it 38 times. I don't think he had any control over. I think some of the people that he got handed, I think some of the books that are coming out were creators that he got handed the creator and said, find a book for them. And so he did. He gave them a list of characters to that they could pick from and just said, here's kind of an idea of what you should probably do. And then they probably promptly threw it away so that they could do whatever the hell they want. And Jordan White, look, let's be honest. The only reason Leah Williams is with DC or at Marvel is because Jordan White is thirstier than a man that's been trapped in the desert for a month.
Yep.
But the only reason that she would ever get, after the disaster that was Extremists, the only reason she would ever get another X book is because of how thirsty Jordan White is. But no, they I think a lot of these characters just, or a lot of these creators just got handed to Hickman and said, find them a book. So he did.
Yeah, I think that's the unfortunate thing is there's not a grand plan on that as far as on that front. He's doing what he can with the talent that he was handed. Yeah. And
I think some of it he got to choose. I think a guy like Brian Hill, he got to choose. I think Ben Percy, he got to choose. I think that Tinney, he might have chosen. I think Gerry Duggan, he got handed. I think Vita and Leia, he got handed. I think Zeb Wells, he probably got handed.
So I'll give you the contrary opinion. I mean, having seen Hickman and kind of his circle and the people he hangs around with, he's definitely on good terms with Teeny and Leah Williams, and these are people he likes that are his friends, legitimately. So whether or not they were part of the Marvel stable and it was like find a place for them, who knows? But I think that we talk about the people to blame. I love what Hickman's doing. I love his East of West. I do like House of X Powers of 10. I think he did a lot for the comic, but he shares some of the responsibility here. He is the architect, and he was able to put his foot down on some things. And part of this is on his feet as well. I have no doubt David Gabriel is saying, hey, you sold one, sell 10. Absolutely. But that's almost more in the variants and kind of the shipping schedule and other pieces. A lot of these people, for better or worse, I mean, Hickman owes some responsibility here, and a lot of these people, like Gerry Duggan, for example, these are friends of his. So it is what it is. We'll see how it all rolls out, and hopefully there's a big master plan. I think I'm always skeptical of being too negative because you spin too much in one direction, you lose sight of the positive things. I'm worried, as we've been talking about on this video, for sure. But things could change. The December event could be awesome. It's definitely going to sell more than Empire and Outlawed, but it's I look at this thing and we give our comments, and I know Paley feels the same, Doc. But I think we all feel this way. It's about we're identifying the risks and we're critical of them and we're critiquing them, but we want this thing to succeed. I mean, God knows,
absolutely.
I want that Leah Williams book to be amazing. Now, the odds of that happening probably low, but I'm hoping for it. And I think we all want these books to be amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, nobody was more shocked than me with the incredible quality of Immortal Hulk, up to like issue 20. Yeah, nobody was more proud to be wrong than I was. And then the other shoe dropped, and it's like, oh my God, here we go, full communism, capitalism, bad. And the whole world's going to explode in 5 years if you don't stop using disposable cups.
Same with me on ASM.
Yep. And it was the same situation after the Craven line. It went. So, yeah, I want these people to be successful, and I want these people to have, these wonderful stories. And at the same time, you look at the track record, you're like, oh, okay, well, there's going to be an implosion at some point. But you always hope for the best, but kind of keep your eye out for the worst, I guess, as the old saying goes.
Absolutely. I think we're all very passionate about X-Men. We're passionate about comic books. Nobody wants Dawn of X. Nobody here wants Dawn of X to fail. We just want it to be rolled out and executed to perfection. My standards are very high. It's going to be hard for anyone to just be like, hit it out the park. It's rare that someone like Jeff Johns and Doomsday Clock, even though it was delayed, which is a bad thing, but the quality overall was just amazing. You got Sean Gordon Murphy on his Murphyverse, and you're just like, oh wow, the quality is great, across the line, because that's really contained. But they're spreading it out so big, it's eventually going to water it down, and I think that's a big concern of all of ours. And it's going to wear out the wallets of customers, of retail customers and Marvel customers, and it's a big concern. So that's why we want to put it out here and talk about these things. Stacks, we haven't really talked to you about this. who do you ultimately blame for this botch, or do you even consider it a botch?
They definitely lost momentum. There's no denying that. It has not been well executed on this. I've talked to Doc about some of the conspiracy theories about trying to bump up the end of the year, trying to get as many titles into December as possible. I do think this was poorly executed on probably the business side of things, and not the writing side of things, because you're looking at these titles, you're looking at some of the quality drops, and like art for Marauders 5, they brought in a second artist, and it was jarring watching the difference between the pages. You were like, what just happened to her face? And you turn the page and you're back to the normal artist. But I think it probably more falls on the business side of it. And back to what Perch was saying, I get Hickman bringing in people he likes and wanting to serve as a mentor and develop people. I mean, any leader does that. That is key to having an organization that is successful moving forward. However, in those situations, you have to be able to look somebody in the eye and tell them, look, this doesn't cut it. Take it back and fix it. And I think that's maybe what we're lacking. I don't know Jonathan Hickman from Adam, but it seems like there were some spots where he could have said, hey, take this back to the drawing board and tighten this up.
I completely agree with your sentiment. What a great, actually, and it really speaks to leadership. Yes, you should give people a chance. Yes, loyalty is important. Yes, you should bring people up. At the same time, true loyalty is also about telling them when they're wrong and correcting course if they're wrong. That is leadership. And I do wonder if maybe Hickman's tight control over this line, it kind of pushed the editorial away for a little bit while House of X Powers of 10 are getting rolling. Maybe this is another example why strong editorial really does matter, even if you have a good showrunner.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we do have a $9.99 super chat. This will be the last part of the show before we do our comic book recommendations for the week. You guys are awesome. What are some X-Men stories from years past, aside from notable ones like Phoenix Saga or GLMK? I will say this. Ed Brisson wrote the story that basically introduced Kid Cable, the version of Cable that's in Dawn of X right now, in X-Men Extermination. It was from a couple years ago. I believe the art's from Pepe Larraz as well. And it's excellent. It was probably the last really good X-Men story before House of X Powers of 10. So that would be my recommendation. Pele, what would you recommend as something like a great story that's not one of the really well-known ones?
Well, we're kind of getting into that X-Men versus Fantastic Four, which I enjoyed.
The 80s one?
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. I enjoyed that. The X-Men versus the Avengers versus X-Men mini. That was really tight. Well done. A lot of them are the miniseries from the 80s and stuff like that. Look into the 80s miniseries. They were generally, on the whole, very good reading. The artwork was fantastic. Overall. There's some stinkers in there, but yeah, if you want to get a little bit into the ancillary stuff, if you haven't read it before, go back and read the first however many issues of New Mutants. There's some really fantastic stuff there. I really like the Bear Saga, and just look into those miniseries most of all. There's a lot of gold in those.
Thank you very much, Pele. Also on the question, what are some underrated 90s and double-aught X-Men or X-Men team-related books? Doc, what would you recommend?
I actually had...
Be fast as well, because I know you'll talk for 20 minutes about this.
No. I would say Uncanny during the 90s. You know what? Surprisingly really good even after Claremont left. I really enjoyed, I actually have a top 5 of this. Outback X-Men, which is actually the 80s, and same with Fall of the Mutants. But the other 3 are all 90s and aughts. Extinction Agenda, Operation Zero Tolerance, Age of Apocalypse, and the Messiah trilogy, which was Endangered Species, Messiah Complex, and I think Messiah War. Necrotia is mixed in with that too. But great stuff. And yeah, as Perch said in the in the chat, X-Men 150 through 250 is incredible, and you could pick it up in cheap runs, 10, 15 issues at a time for, $20. In single issues on eBay. You can just look for some old X-Men lots. They're readily available. The books were selling 200 to 500,000 copies every month.
Yeah.
There's millions of them out there.
I think
awesome.
I would argue that I know that's before the 90s, but the 150 to 250 run, 100 issues of Uncanny X-Men was probably, in my mind, the strongest solid 100 issue run of the title maybe we've ever seen in comics. It's just there's just so many good things in there. And they're just doing simple stories well. Very few events in that period. I think maybe one. And the value for your money for stories is incredible.
And if you want to go look at it from an investor standpoint, the sub 150 issues in high grade, I keep drilling this over and over and over again. In high grade, those books are hard to find because they were very well read. They were loved. And finding them higher in very fine condition is tough. So if you're looking for something that's going to absolutely increase in value, especially since we're a little bit of a dip of the market right now as far as values are concerned, definitely jump into that. You're going to be seeing some pretty decent returns, as the X-Men filter into the MCU. And some books that have not gone up in value substantially in the last 4 to 5 years are going to see, well into double-digit, increases in value. So you'll be able to enjoy the books, carefully read them, put them aside, and make a little bit of money later on.
Thank you very much, Perch. All right, Stacks, what's your last recommendation? For this question,
my jam as a kid was Executioner's Song, just because the nostalgia for me. Just that was one that really, I was picking it up issue to issue. It was cliffhangers. It was, me waiting for 12 issues, and plus, they had the little trading card in it. So that was just my nostalgia filled. Loved it back in the day. It goes across, X-Men, X-Force, X-Factor, hits all the titles, both Uncanny and adjective lists. So that was, Strife, Apocalypse, both X-Men teams, Cable, all that stuff. It was great.
Also, there's another run in there. Perch brought it up in our little private chat. I wanted to mention as well. Rick Remender's Uncanny X-Force is one of the most amazing action comics you'll ever read. What were your thoughts on that one, Perch? Exactly.
No, I mean, I think somebody put in the main chat as well. It was a great run. It was a run with a plan, and you can always tell when a writer has a beginning to end plan. And Remender did. I think this is one of those runs that's going to be remembered decades later, just being a good, solid batch of comics. Very strong, gets to the heart of some of the characters, does some pretty unique things. In my mind, maybe the best way Deadpool has been written in forever. I just think that character was well. Psylocke as well, a bunch of these guys. And I mean, in terms of if we're going for gossip rumor sites, this is not Bleeding Cool, the originator of the technovirus on the computer on the world. But I'm just going to insert that every video now. There is a rumor out there that Rick Remender has a Disney look agreement coming, and that he may be re-entering the fold at some extent to help develop some of the films. And if true, if it's true, that'd be awesome. But also, I would wonder if that run gets to be more important as well.
I thought he just signed a 3-year deal with Sony.
I've heard that as well, but there's a rumor out there that there's at least some level of consulting agreement that's been put in place with Feige for some shows.
Okay, well,
we'll see.
That would be very exciting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I just, before we get into comic recommendations, thank you so much for joining us today. We've hit a lot of milestones this week. Like I mentioned earlier, Perch joined me for a retailer video that actually went to 10,000. I've never had a video do that today until this week. I believe I've never had more than 90 people jump into one of these live streams with us. I remember the first one I did with Doc. I think we had 3 at one point. We got to 135 today, so that was a huge jump. It was almost a 30% jump as far as.
Love you all.
What's that?
We love you all.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you so much for joining us. That was amazing. I can't believe we got to those numbers today, and hopefully we'll keep all the momentum up. But now it's time to talk about some comic recommendations. What are the great comics we read this week? Stacks, what are you recommending?
If you're not picking up Donny Cates' Thor, Thor #2 comes out this week, and I'm sure there's still some Thor #1s there on the shelf you can pick up. I'm a Donny Cates fan. I really like his stuff, and he kicked it off with a big swing in #1. So definitely pick up #2. Besides that, X-Men #5 and X-Force #6. Those are my big 3 for the week. I'm stoked. I'm trying to figure out what order those are going to go in. It's going to be thrown down in eeny, meeny, miny, mo or something, because that's books I'm really looking forward to.
Doc, what are you recommending for the viewers this week?
I'm actually not even sure what the hell comes out this week. I'd say X-Men. I think that
we're talking about comics that you read this week.
Oh, that I read this week.
Yeah, what did you read that was good?
Honestly, the only thing I read this week was Marauders.
Fine.
The only thing that I picked up this week was Marauders, and are
you recommending it?
Not really. It was just not very good. So I'm going to stick with my usual recommendations: X-Men, X-Force, Punisher Soviet, Flash Forward, Bloodshot, as long as you don't read the dialogue and just make it up in your own head, because Tim Seeley cannot write. Batman and the Outsiders, and Curse of the White Knight.
All right, let's go to Perch. I know you have a different outlook on Tim Seeley's writing abilities. What are you recommending this week?
I do, but I mean, for books I read, I mean, it was an odd week. I think the attention of the new Guardians of the Galaxy relaunch was interesting to see, at least tonally different. There's some potential there in characters, but it's just it's hard to get into it. So I guess maybe it's not a recommendation, but if you didn't like Donny Cates' run, you still like the cosmic books, I would say for recommendation-wise, it is different. It's fundamentally different from what you had before. So that's either going to be a good thing or a bad thing for you. I didn't mind Firefly. I think Batman, it's nice to see a different writer. It's interesting that the excitement and energy is not back like I think people expected it would be when Tom King left. But it's a solid little book there, and they're doing some interesting things that hopefully don't get just erased. But otherwise, it was an odd week. There's a bunch of books I was looking forward to coming out, and they just weren't as strong as I hoped they were. So hopefully next week does a little bit more for us. The interesting one is nobody's really talking about Wonder Woman 750 as a major milestone book like they have with the other big ones in the past. And
milestone.
Yeah, I think we may be seeing the end of this giant milestone jam issue with a bunch of people in it, because this one just did not land like it should have. So, there's some good stuff coming out next week. I think it'll be interesting to see where X-Force goes with its current storyline, and we will take it from there. Flash Forward, of course, that's wrapping up soon. Great book.
I want to say thank you very much to Sith.713 Lord for the $10 super chat. Really appreciate you supporting the channel. Much love, my friend. Pele, what are you recommending at the channel or at the store?
The True Believers that came out this week are really good. The Criminally Insane line they're going with Dracula #1, Purple Man #1. They're a buck. Pick them up. They're really entertaining little reads. Web of Venom, The Good Son came out, and it was more popular than I anticipated. We sold out very quickly, and I got some reorders in on that. If you're trying to keep up as far as the Venom storyline, it seems to be a really good extension of that. That character's, his son's going to be really going places. Typical kind of extension of the father to son, and I thought it was a decent read. Wonder Woman 750. I think that probably Wes is going to be talking about that a little bit later. It was better than I anticipated it would be. That's what I keep hearing from all the customers. And my personal favorite, which was Vampire State Building #4. I just love that series. I just do. It's like some really crazy over the top stuff, and I'm really love my horror comics. So that's my personal recommendation would be Vampire State Building #4.
So Yule Carter, who I believe is a comic retailer as well, is saying if you buy superhero comics, Cobra is the best. Spawn Fire is recommending Batman, Detective Comics, White Knight, Basket Full of Heads, and Once in the Future is definitely a Batman-centric book this week. What else we got? I missed him. There's too many chats coming in here. There it is.
The Flood.
FF2 is recommending Family Tree number 3, Batman and the Outsiders, Detective Comics. For X-Men fans, God Loves, Man Kills. There is a director's cut coming out soon. Red Pixel saying Wonder Woman was fantastic. Comics by Perch is saying Hell Arisen is pretty good because there was a question about that.
Yeah, that was a pretty good. I mean, it's you're getting a classic storyline. So I mean, one of the things that I think a lot of people complain about is that comics don't have just a 6-issue, everything contained, good one and done kind of storyline anymore. That they're all trying to branch off into other things, or they're taking very like an issue is just devoted to having coffee in a shop or something. And Hell Arisen is there's some action, things move along, the place moves back and forth, and you're seeing the Bruce Wayne evil Batman who laughs against Mega Luthor and them kind of try and have a chess match against each other. A lot of things going on there. Shock at the end, and I'll be cautious with spoilers this time. But if you're a DC fan, you want that kind of classic DC storyline, Hell Arisen is a good shot.
Thank you very much. Dominic Powell is saying Flash Forward, Shazam, Justice League Dark, Birthright, Isola, X-Men, Fallen Angels, X-Force, Batman and the Outsiders, Detective Comics, Venom, Last God, and Undiscovered Country, all great comic books. I am recommending Wonder Woman 750. I was shocked by the quality. They put a lot of not great writers on here. The two most notable writers, as far as Wonder Woman goes, were Gail Simone and Gary Rucka. But actually, Vita Ayala stole the show. I'm not a fan of hers. I think she's not a very good writer, but she absolutely killed it. It was a 5 out of 5 story. Her story was easily the best in that whole comic. And I think Flash 750 will be a better gauge on these milestones because they absolutely loaded that comic up with a much more well-known array of writers that are known for the character. Also recommending Curse of the White Knight 6, Guardians of the Galaxy number 1. If you can get past the Marvel Boy introduction, which is really off-putting, the comic's fine. And then IDW has a sci-fi book about a group of robots called the Kill Switch. The second issue came out this week. It's hilarious. It's one of the darkest comedies I've read in a long time. If you like sci-fi, if you like to laugh a little bit, try out Kill Switch. The art is actually fantastic. I think you'll love it.
My dishonorable mention is Excalibur.
Oh yeah, don't read that book.
You beat me to it.
Nobody wants to read that one. All right, so I want to say thank you all once again. We made history here on the channel. Really appreciate all the support, and thank you so much for joining us. Salamat po.
Thanks, everybody.
There it is, and I'm out.
Thanks, guys.